Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My fiancé and I have been engaged for a year and a half and have been planning our wedding since. We've put a lot of effort into making sure everything is meticulous and special and unique and represents us and our personalities. We've always been the couple that stands out in the middle of a crowd because we're so opposite from each other. Seeing that I look like the girl next door that goes to church every Sunday and is best friends with a priest's daughter. My fiancé, however, looks like he's either a gamer boy in his late 20s or a punk rock artist. That may sound offensive, but it's not because he is a punk rock artist, and that has come with many perks, some being that it made our friend group even more diverse than our relationship itself. Recently, at one of the unions that we host once every 6 to 7 months, our friends started suggesting things to us that we should do during our wedding to make it all the more unique and representative of the nature of our relationship. One of those things is called the expectations list. It entails that we both make a list in which we write down what we expect each other to be like as a married couple and finalize what we're asking from each other in the marriage. We thought it was hilarious. It was genuinely something we've never seen in a wedding before ours and indeed fell within the criteria of the unique things we wanted to do for the sake of change and originality. Months passed since we agreed to do the expectation list. I went over the rules multiple times following it, during which we never really mentioned the part that the only twist we would be giving it would be that instead of reading it while toasting our marriage at the after party, we would opt for reading it during the bachelor's parties, which we were holding mine separately with my girlfriends and cousins and him with his friends and family members. The day before the wedding, our friends and family got together in preparation and everything. Before we separated, we spent our bachelor's and bachelorette parties away from each other by asking my fiancé to give me his expectations letter as I handed him mine. I noticed that a sense of panic took him over as he remembered that we would be reading them that night in front of their friends and family members. He started coming up with excuses as to where he had forgotten it and forgot to write it out and so on until he gave in and gave it up to me and said, "Please don't embarrass me and don't make it awkward and don't read it until I'm no longer here." As he walked away with his friends, I started feeling a sense of dread seeing how his reactions were so strange and out of character for the calm, collected, and quiet nature my fiancé has always had. As planned, we gathered around a table, and I took my list in hand and waited for everybody to settle in to start reading aloud. The things on the list started as strange and unnecessarily rude descriptions of what his hypothetical perfect partner in marriage would be like, which weren't anything remote to the person I am. Then, things started taking more aggressive or straight up fishing for problems as the list went on to a point where it ended with something that made my blood curdle with rage and led me to make a decision that stuck with me the following day and resulted in ending of our marriage before it even started. The list started with, "I request that we have an annual trip or vacation to a new country each year, and everybody pays for their expenses and the expenses of a person should they choose to invite one. Then it would be that if either one of us lost the wedding ring, we would have to make our own money aside from the one we make for our home and repurchase it because wasting away expenses is not a good thing." At this point, there was no escaping it, as I was torn between owning up to the rules of the game and reading things out loud, or shutting up and keeping whatever dignity I had left. One of the last points on the list, and the one that infuriated me the most, was that he was expecting that futuristically in the relationship, we would make it open so that there would be more room for fun and exploration and experiences because there was no way for him to be the person to be tied down by marriage to a single person. What shocked me the most was that all of this was coming out of absolutely nowhere. My fiancé is nothing like this. He's not the thirsty, erotic, and sexual person that would thirst for relationships and could jeopardize his marriage for them. So, on first thought, I tried swallowing all of the embarrassment and humiliation I drowned in from reading this filth all the way to the end. Despite the surprises that I found on the list, I still found it in myself to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that there was a misunderstanding or some prank his friends did to him to sabotage his list, because there was absolutely no way this was his list of expectations that he wanted to go into our marriage with. It didn't go with his personality. It didn't go with morals and principles, and it's something he's never even insinuated before. I would know if he would be the kind of person to want an open relationship and marriage, but he's not, or at least I thought so. He came home the following morning still drunk from his night out, which was already concerning enough because the wedding would take place around 3 or 4 p.m. If he remains as drunk as he was when he first walked into the house, he would not make it to the wedding, and honestly, because I was so abruptly taken aback by his list of expectations, I was thinking to myself that even if he does sober up and his list is what he's expecting from me, then he won't be having to attend to the wedding anyways, because there won't be one. Nevertheless, I waited for him to sleep off the alcohol for about 5 or 6 hours, and I woke him up with coffee and aspirin to sober him up as soon as possible. As soon as he was able to muster out some words and put together a sentence, I asked him if he meant what he wrote on his list of expectations. He said that he did, and these are things that he just never had the courage to say, and he thought that the list of expectations was a perfect opportunity to let things off his chest. He then went to explain that he didn't actually request that I do these things and that there were no obligation for me to adhere to them. Not understanding the extent to which I was absolutely batshit crazy, pissed off at him. I asked him if the whole expectation list was just a thing that him and his friends made up to get something off his chest, and finally having gotten a confirmation that all of this was plotted so he would get to say all sorts of inappropriate things right before marrying me, having not said anything for more than 6 years of dating was all it took to push me off the edge, because as soon as he confirmed all of my suspicions, I got myself a suit and started packing my clothes, trying to get as far away as humanly possible from him and his psychotic friends, and asked him to apologize to my family on my behalf and try to host some party or something using the resources which we bought for the wedding to not let them go to waste. He didn't say anything or try to stop me, which just confirms my suspicions that I had, that he didn't actually want to get married, and maybe the list was just an excuse for him to call off the wedding in the first place. But nevertheless, I called off the wedding immediately. I called my cousins and friends that were with me the previous night to apologize for the uncomfortable situation I put them in, and I haven't seen his face ever since the day we were supposed to be married. Not the a-hole. It's so apparent that he just wanted an easy way out of the relationship and couldn't get the courage to call off the wedding himself or end the relationship before it got to that point. What the hell kind of expectations are those? It doesn't take a genius to notice that these were deliberately written to sabotage the wedding, which was to take place the following day. Not the a-hole. Some men never fail to disappoint me. You're clearly out of his league considering that he's probably just an artist who wants to be feeling insufficient and capable of handling an immature and healthy relationship with a girl that loves him. Get better standards. If you are willing to marry a man who has never been opinionated and only showed the worst possible opinion the night before your wedding, then you need to learn your self-value and find someone that lives up to it. Not the a-hole. I can't imagine the embarrassment and humiliation you felt when you were reading those words to your cousins and friends on the night before you were supposed to marry this guy. It sounds so stupid and ridiculous that the fact that you're choosing to marry this man is more of an offense to you than it is to him. And I feel for you when you said that you felt embarrassed and offended by what he was saying and the obligation to read it out aloud, which is something that Herman and his friends probably came up with to avoid the wedding. Making this even worse than it is, calling off the wedding with this loser is perhaps the best decision you're ever going to make. As much as it hurts to end the long-term relationship, it would be best if you were proud of yourself for standing up for yourself and getting better standards for men. Next story. I, female American, 37, met my fiancé, male 46, Canadian Lebanese 3 years ago. He has a 23-year-old daughter, Najwa. She was heavily against her parents separating, which I had nothing to do with because I met him 2 years after the separation. Najwa and I seemed to be doing pretty good, getting along first, but then she started doing things like damaging my car and legal documentations. She damaged my passport from preventing me from traveling with her dad and threw away my dog's food. Her excuse was always that her mom told her to do those things and was pressured by her. I did my best to let things go and she stopped and we sort of started getting along again until her dad and I announced our marriage date. She literally angrily screamed at us at the dinner table, but the next minute said congratulations with a huge smile on her face. Her own 34-year-old Lebanese-Canadian boyfriend called her nuts. She came over to her dad's house while I was out and found my wedding dress. I've never been married before. This is my first experience ever and I was overjoyed with the dress and ruined it with paint, literally wall paint she brought with her. She wasn't there when I got home, but the door cam revealed everything. I have a very negative reaction. I confronted her and she still denied. I made a police report but got talked into letting it go since her boyfriend paid for the dress. Everything was expected to go back to normal, but I was done with her. She didn't even apologize, and now I'm discussing filing for a restraining order against her, because this was the last straw. Her dad found out about the potential restraining order and disagreed completely and said I went over the top by even considering it. But she's an adult and she ruined hundreds worth of dollars and she should face the consequences. Where does it stop? He insisted I let it go because he wants her at our wedding and an RO will prevent her from being there. He said I already paid for the dress and he'll get her to apologize if I wanted, but I still refused. He told me to at least wait until after the wedding, then do whatever because he really wants Najwa there, and called me cruel to dismiss how important this is for him. It got too much for me and I told him I could have made things worse and had her charged, but I just want her to stay away and asked him to respect my decision. He said I was unreasonable to think he'd support me in this and begged that I reconsider because this will ruin his relationship with her forever. I feel like morally I could be wrong since she's my stepdaughter and we're family. I think this might ruin the relationship between us, her dad, and my in-laws, who are begging me not to do this. Edited to add, my fiancé has always been supportive of me and helped me so much while struggling, and he's unlike the family, he's kind and understanding. I think before you get married, you need to have a serious sit down with your fiancé about what kind of contact you're going to have with his daughter. Do you want him to cut contact or just you? Is she banned from your house or will he let her in when you're not there? It's hard for parents to choose between their significant other and their children. He desires to have her in his life and protect her. He may always choose her over you. You need to consider if you can be a part of a family knowing you are never 100% safe from her hatred for you. Not the a-hole, but you really need to talk about this before you get married. I suggest pre-marriage counseling for an outside professional opinion. Not the a-hole, but you have every right to. But take it from someone with experience. Call this off. I too have a stepdaughter from hell. She's horrendous. She disappeared for 3 years and I got to enjoy my incredible husband, our family, and life is bliss. Now she's making her way back in. After a barrage of incredibly awful bullcrap she dug us through, I have developed panic disorder and have to take 2 different medications just to get through every day. It's not worth it. Call off the wedding and find someone else. She will not go away and you will not get peace. It will only get worse. Not the a-hole. Your future stepdaughter has done more than enough to warrant this, but you can't file a restraining order and hope to have a normal marriage with her father. You have to reassess this whole situation with your fiancé. Sit with him and make him understand how far his daughter is overstepping, and he needs to control the situation as her father by either talking with her himself and/or therapy. All of this should have been done by your fiancé long ago if everyone could see that his daughter had a problem with your relationship. Tell him to step up as a father now because his inaction is destroying both of his relationships with you and his daughter. Next story. My mom has a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues that she refuses to go to therapy or a doctor for. I suspect narcissism, but she's emotionally and mentally abusive my whole life, to both my brother and I, and she truly lives in her own reality. She has a history of lying and making up stories to victimize herself and place blame on other people. I'm 35 with 2 young kids and her behavior has started to freak me out so much, I refuse to leave my kids alone with her. I'm scared she will do something and they'll lie about it or tear them down the way she did me as a kid. So anyway, she met her ex-boyfriend 2 years ago and they have been on and off for the last year. I've been around him pretty often over the last year and he seems like a decent guy overall. Honestly, it seemed normal for my mom, but every time they break up, it's always his fault. He's abusive, an alcoholic, cheating, lying, spending money, etc. The last fight they had, she alleged an altercation that turned out to be untrue. She tried to play the victim for sympathy and because she was embarrassed of how the argument happened. She admitted to blacking out and thinking that's what happened, and then they got back together the next week. So she basically made up the entire thing to victimize herself. Well, fast forward to now, last month, she claimed they broke up for the final and last time because he's an alcoholic. I've never heard this allegation before and she has a history of getting drunk and being nasty since I was a kid. Of course, she always has an excuse for why she drank and it's not because she has a problem. Her story just wasn't adding up, so I decided to reach out to her ex-boyfriend. He told me that she verbally attacked him for something relating to his ex-girlfriend while she was drunk and tried to flip it onto him. He said she was blacked out and her behavior scared him. He also said this wasn't the first time her behavior raised red flags, and he left it at that. When my mom found out and said I betrayed her and he was lying, I believe him 100,000% because of the things I saw growing up, and I told her she needs to see a therapist before she can be around my kids again. So am I the a-hole for reaching out to my mom's ex-boyfriend? I'm just gonna tell you, as someone who at the beginning of this year cut out the narcissistic, alcoholic, cocaine snorting, mental health having, refuses to diagnose, literal wedding and wedding night ruiner that is my mother, I have never been so free. You need to do it. Send her a long ace frickin' message about why you see doing what you're doing. Then you block that number, that Facebook profile, that Instagram account, everything she's on. If I thought it was possible, I'd say to frickin' move too, so she doesn't know where you live and can't just come knocking. But that's up to original poster what to do. I'm just saying though, no contact will be tremendous for your mental health and will give her a much needed dose of reality that maybe she's the reason people keep leaving. I'm gonna go with not the a-hole. Originally, I was going to say everyone sucks here, but I've changed my mind after some quick thought. I was going to say everyone sucks here because I thought you could have at least given your mother the decency to explain herself more and should have straight up said stop lying and tell me the truth to see if she actually would fess up and be honest. But with everything you've given, behavior-wise and also the alcoholism, you probably know her better than anyone. It doesn't matter what she'll say to keep lying. So not the a-hole because I don't think you could have gotten a reliable answer any other way. Yeah, there's a lot more I could add honestly, but I was trying to sum it up. Every time I've seen her or spoken to her since the alleged fight, she keeps telling me the same story over and over again and blaming just him. I told her I've also seen her act out and drunk, and she has an excuse every time. It was my dad's fault when they were going through the divorce, or she felt sorry for herself when her and her ex broke up, and she swears this time it was different. I just keep catching her in weird lies, and we always go in circles because she cannot say sorry. I swear, this woman hasn't admitted to anything in her life.